Okay, so now that the dust has settled on what was an insane trade deadline, let us talk about the future of the Brooklyn Nets between where Mikal Bridges can get to as a scorer because his last 15 games or so have been really, really promising. Cam Thomas, who's been lighting the world on fire. Can Cam Johnson keep growing? Ben Simmons, just his entire situation. This team's future with draft picks and all that. For some general thoughts first, number one, I think these guys should be really fun on League Pass. Number two, defensively, I sound like a broken record mentioning they're switching defense all the time, but, of course, Claxton has been the heart of that whole thing, and we'll see if he can continue his all-defense bid. I think he probably will. Of course, it's not just the switching, it's also protecting the basket and all that. And then, you got Mikal Bridges now, who's also one of the best defensive players in the league. That's about as awesome of a duo as you could think of defensively. Ben Simmons, even with all of his stuff this year, has had stretches of being great defensively, and Dorian Finney-Smith is a good defender as well. This team is prepared to still be competitive, if you ask me. Royce O'Neal, also a good defender. Now let's talk about some offense, and I think you got to start with Cam Thomas. The dude dropped 40 points in 3 straight games, and it's really been about a 6-game stretch here where he's been going nuts. His last game he shot kind of rough from the field, but he drew a lot of free throws. So, of course, Cam has had his stretch of making contested jumpers, and I think the Clippers game was probably the biggest example of that, just the amount of tough threes. He had a sidestep corner 3 over Zubats. He had a pull-up 3 at the very beginning of a half-court possession over Batum. He's also drawn fouls on quite a few jump shots as well, which is very intriguing, and I'll get to his overall foul drawing, but yeah, contested shot making is nice. The other thing, though, is, man, I tell you, Cam Thomas, between his combination of, what's he listed at, 6'3", 6'4", I guess, but being pretty damn strong. He's listed at 210. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a little bigger than 210, maybe 215 or so, because he just looks pretty damn built. And his hesitation dribbles, which frees defenders, or, sometimes he'll do 2 between the legs dribbles before attacking. He did that against the Wizards. He had a possession on Denny where he goes between the legs, hesitates. Denny doesn't bite. He goes between the legs again, gets Denny off balance, and then he makes this 10-foot pull-up bank shot thing. The other thing I noticed with Cam is I feel like sometimes he takes kind of wide angles on his drives where it freaks the defender out a little bit because they think he's going to go right at him, but then he goes an extra foot to the right or the left, and then it kind of gets the defender off balance. And once Cam gets the angle on you, he's kind of got you because of how built he is. You can't really just easily bump him off the spot or whatever. I feel like he also just has really good just improvisational instincts, I guess, when trying to beat defenders, where maybe a screen's coming and he sees his defender is already kind of preparing for the screen, so then he'll attack a little earlier or crossover. Or there was a play against the Wizards where he got a handoff from Claxton, and then DeLon Wright was kind of on the other side, so he freezes and then jab steps the other way, and DeLon Wright stumbles over, and then he gets a pull-up. Cam Thomas is built to score, man, and it has led to already some pretty wild free throw attempt games. And an interesting thing, in college he played 29 games and he had 220 free throw attempts. The only questions with him, I think, are, can he keep up the contested shot making, and also, how do the Nets get the best version of Cam, which is, he wants to cook, no doubt, without having their offense be too stagnant, pretty much. But that's a pretty normal NBA problem to have. And for what it's worth, they've already had some stagger screens run for him, so it's not always an ISO up top. Now we go on to Mikal Bridges. So Mikal has averaged 23 points on 60 true shooting for the last 15 games or so, and there are some moments where they've given the ball in pick and roll. Well, the Suns were. He changed teams, of course, and he's been able to get into his pull-up mid-range, and that's been effective enough. But the biggest thing to me with Mikal is there's these moments within the flow of, it's been the Suns offense, it's going to be the Nets offense, where maybe he will get a handoff after doing some sort of baseline action or whatever, or he'll get a stagger screen and then get the ball. And I think in the past, some of those plays would have resulted in him kind of keeping the offense going, make the next swing pass, and then go relocate somewhere. Whereas now, he's just attacking in more of those opportunities. He's taking it downhill, and whether it's getting into the pull-up or getting a little more physical than you might expect given his thin frame. His free throw attempts have been up. He's had about 5 free throw attempts a game in his last 15. The finishing has been good, and that is really promising stuff. And it's going to be on the Nets to continue all that with Mikal. So you imagine Claxton screening for him, let's say. And, of course, Mikal's also still a very good off-ball player. He's also an awesome cutter. He's always been good at transition and relocating within the flow of an offense to get an open 3 or whatever. As for Cam Johnson, of course he's an awesome shooter. And I would like to believe he can handle more 3-point attempts. Similar to Mikal, he's also a good cutter. He's been a good finisher. My questions with Cam are, is he a good enough ball handler to have him do anything besides more of the off-ball stuff? Because I've seen him have moments in transition where he's bringing it up or he's making a play, and it's like, oh, okay, that was pretty nice. The other thing I wonder is, will he ever be able to get the mid-range game involved at all? Because he's never really been able to do that. I don't know, but the 3-ball attempts going up, that'd be huge. Do we talk about Ben Simmons now? Okay. Look, man, I just hope Ben's all right. Mentally, with the back, I mean, he had that quote recently where he was like, it's going to take me a minute to get back to where I was, and here's hoping. But also, it is an interesting thing, because you got Dinwiddie, and we know that Dinwiddie's just, he's going to take shots, no doubt, and he should. He's a good player. Between him and how you prioritize like his ball handling duties versus Ben Simmons and Cam Thomas's, because Cam wants to do his thing, on top of just the shot attempts between Dinwiddie, Cam Thomas, the development of Mikal and Cam Johnson now. So Jock Vaughn's got some things to figure out. And one more time with Ben, hopefully we can see him just attacking the basket like he once was. The other thing that's interesting is that there's a lot of players in this team. I've mentioned Dorian Finney-Smith, and he can slot in basically anywhere. You got Royce O'Neal was a similar thing. Seth Curry, Patty Mills, Joe Harris, Edmund Sumner, Yuta Watanabe. There's a lot of guys on this team who are going to be looking to get minutes here, Now, I think it helps that a decent chunk of the guys on this team can play a couple of positions and you'll be okay, but, still, somebody's feelings are probably going to get hurt in this rotation. And also, I just want to mention Nick Claxton is developing his handle to where he can close the distance sometimes and sort of make something happen if you give it to him from 10 feet away from the basket. He's also putting his shoulder into guys and busting out a hook shot, so that's nice. On top of, again, switching defense, love it, dunks, offensive rebounds, dives to the rim. Let's get into some more of the money and draft pick stuff. So, because of the first Harden deal, a lot of their picks are going to Houston or they're involved in swaps, but they've got a whole bunch of Suns picks now. They've got the Mavericks pick in 2029. They've got some Philly picks here as well. So they've got ammo to either make trades or just make selections in the draft pretty much. Nothing wrong with that. And the thing with that is because their own picks are a bit compromised year to year, there isn't as much incentive for them to not be good. So why not enjoy having a bunch of good players while using other teams' draft picks? Those Suns picks in the distant future, like the ones at the tail end of this decade, those ones are pretty damn interesting. Cam Johnson is in line for an extension. I'm just going to guess they give it to him because why wouldn't you? He's a good player who you could develop, and also you got him for Kevin Durant, so you'd probably like to have him. I know Cam is 26, Mikal's 26, but I do think they have higher ceilings to go as offensive players. But that does lead to another thing. They're, at least according to Basketball Reference, they're projected to be at $145 million for next season. Luxury tax is $165. If you give Cam Johnson an extension, that you might be pushing up against that thing. So we'll see if they try to make any money moves this offseason. And okay, that's the Nets. It's pretty good. Look, I get it. It's impossible to erase what happened over the last few years. But as far as what they have right now, I think it's solid. And again, they should be pretty damn fun. And also, they're the 5th seed right now. They've got a 2.5 game lead on Miami for number 6. They have a pretty decent lead on the teams in the play-in tournament, so they've definitely got something to play for the rest of the season.